President Eddie Gochenour. Ed, good to see you.
Good morning, sir. Good to be here.
You look nice and warm and bundled.
I am. Thank you.
And Steve Catlett, Vice President. Steve, good to see you.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Thank you both for coming in.
Yeah, before we go, I'm sure you have a lot of questions for Steve and Eddie. But our previous section was talking about voter or election integrity. And you folks are at the core of our election process, both as its machines are being set up, even though it's under Tony Petrucci, but you do the canvassing after the fact. Is there any hint at all in our compilation of voter registration and the execution of our election process? Is there any sense at all that we have irregularities in Berkeley County?
Absolutely not. To go through that process, that canvassing process, and watch those employees, we choose a particular precincts that have to be counted, but to see the integrity and the desire for those numbers to equal out is very comforting to know that the staff that's there and the folks that are overseeing it, because there's a Democrat and Republican, they're overseeing what's going on as well. As well as the commission, but I am very confident that our election was handled very well, and my hat goes off to the clerk and his staff.
And a couple things on that, if I can, and correct me if I'm wrong. One, the information that is passed to the Secretary of State as far as voting tabulation is the result. The Secretary of State does not provide numbers back to us. We provide numbers only to the Secretary of State, and all of our numbers are backed up with a paper copy.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah, and Steve, I'm sure you felt the same way.
They were hand counted. I mean, and people, we don't have to. And the Secretary of State also has a representative there at our canvassing as well.
But my point is, the argument was made where there's always a possibility of hacking. There's barriers put up that prevent an outside entity coming in and influence our tabulation.
Yes, sir. There's checks and balances.
Yeah, and we're kind of an isolated or insulated process, so nobody can come in and influence the tabulation.
And every time I go to vote, I'm always just so thankful for, number one, that we have the ability to vote on our own without fear. But the folks that are working the polls, they do a tremendous job. They are so committed to what they're doing, and I thank them every time I go to vote for what they do for our process, across this whole country. So
when you do the canvass, is that literally a hand count?
It is. What is it, Steve?
We pick out 3 precincts by a random draw, and so if all 3 come within 1%, then we're good. If one of the 3 don't, then we got to do every precinct, which is 80.
Do you remember a time, Eddie or Steve, when that's had to happen?
No, but we've had to recount it several times because somebody just going through hundreds and hundreds of ballots. Or the little tags, and misread something, and then if it didn't add up, you recount them again. Mm-hmm. So I think not this past election, but the one before, it was getting a little concerning.
Yeah, also, if if a candidate that was not elected, the candidate came in second or third, they can request and receive a recounting of that particular precinct.
At whose expense?
At the county's expense. No, at the county's expense.
What exactly are you counting? Is it the piece of paper that I feed into the machine?
No, it is. Yes. They count. Yeah. We don't. They count.
No, for the canvassing.
Those ballots. Yes, they count those ballots. Yeah.
So, in the canvass, are you calculating, verifying that it was truly this many votes for this candidate and that many? What is that piece of paper? I don't remember that piece of paper.
On absentee ballots is the one I understand.
Yeah, that's
the ones that hand counted like that.
Oh, okay.
Are the absentee ballots that come in and
not the ones that are fed into the machine.
Right. The early voting and the absentee ballots sometimes were the questions. So those are the ones you had to go back.
Yeah, and early voting both, but they are put into the machine, but then we hand count to make sure that it's accurate. So
okay.
This might be a better question for Tony Petrucci than for you two folks, but I do understand that there were some precincts that were incorrect in the last election in terms of the ballots that went to specific precincts? Do you have any idea ultimately at the end how many that amounted to?
Yeah, it was very minimal. That was in the early voting.
Okay.
It was like it wasn't caught.
Four precincts, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't caught until like the second day or something of that nature. So they were able to get ahead of that, and
And it definitely, actually, we came back the second day. I mean, it went on for 2 days instead of 1 day, which normally it is. But there's no question it had no impact on the election at all.
Is there anything that you folks have instructed Tony to do, or you're aware of that he's done to make sure that that does not repeat in the next election?
well, I think that the complicated part is getting the precincts all straight, and then the wards within the city. That was where the real problem was. So, and I've encouraged in the past, this time I didn't feel that if I had to, but in the past I've encouraged them to reach out to the city and let them review those ballots as well, to have a fresh set of eyes, to get Gina Long, the recorder for the city, to look at those ballots as well. So I think that they have a better working relationship now than what they did the last election.
And I think what it was this time was a certain precinct was put in the wrong magisterial district.
Yes.
And it was as simple as that. If a precinct number 15 should have been in magisterial district 5, they may have inadvertently put in magisterial district 4. Yeah. So they did not break down within the precinct. It's just the precinct as a whole was put in the wrong magisterial district.
What is in your folded paper there that's clipped, Steve?
I know you talked with the city the other day about their budget, so I brought some budget information just in case you
Excellent.
have questions for that.
Yeah,
So
we can get right into that too.
I think I have it here, but just in case.
It's always good to have a paper backup, as we've just discussed in the
Printed
last
large
quarter.
format, I see. So.
Yeah, so first and foremost, any effects at the county level in regards to federal funds and what's happening in Washington, D.C. that you've seen play out to this point?
Well, I mean, we do have some grant-funded positions, especially in our day report center. Have a lot of those are grant-funded. That's probably the largest group. But then the other caveat to this is the Inwood Park. We were able to get some federal monies earmarked for the park, and so we don't know what's going to happen with that. So those are the only two that come to my mind, Steve.
And of course, the raised grant that the city
absolutely.
actually was the applicant, but it was a co-application with us, the county, and we really look forward to having those funds available. So
Yeah, how much money are we talking about for the Inwood Park?
the federal thing was 1.1 million,
And how?
and then there's a match from the state of 800,000.
So about $2 million at stake.
Mm-hmm.
And will you be able to get the state part if the feds end up not releasing the money?
Not sure.
Still to be seen.
Yeah.
To be answered, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I think the governor did something very similar, kind of put a freeze or anything that went out, within a certain amount of time has got to be reviewed again. So it's all good.
In regards to the federally funded positions, how many of those are there and where are those positions?
Well, there at the Day Report Center, I can't tell you exact number, Rob, right off the top of my head, but it's significant.
20, 30?
Probably.
More?
30.
About 30? Those are all full-time positions?
Yes, sir.
And what do those people do?
Well, they most of them are counselors. There's folks. Most of those people we've received grant funding from HIDA, the High Intensity Drug Agency, but most of them are counselors and do the group therapies and all those type of things. So that would be our biggest loss. Absolutely.
When does the money to pay those salaries run out?
That's a great question.
So, I mean, I guess my question is, in a month from now, if no federal funds are released, are you still making payroll with these folks, or do you have to start laying people off?
That would absolutely be the last resort. I'm not sure exactly what we would do. I think it would certainly take a huge conversation with all of us to figure this out.
And this might be a Gary Wine question, but is there a date uncertain of in advance when this actually becomes a bridge you have to cross?
Has not been discussed at this point yet.
No.
But there's a date.
Will you be discussing it at any time? Is it a concern at this time, or is it still too far off in the distance?
Well, it's been
Obviously, it's a concern.
it's been a thought.
for sure.
That's for sure. It's certainly been a thought.
About 80% of our staff over there is funded through grants. So that's why we have the ability to save as much money we do on our jail fees because of that program and the home confinement and all those programs combined. So
How much has it saved you on your jail fees? Do you
7 to
estimate?
8 million a year.
7 to 8 million a year.
A year.
How many
And
years has that been for?
Our jail fees right now, the last 2 years was just under 2.5 million. It's going to hit probably 3.5 this year, and so that's an extra million that we had to find to try to make it work. So we're going to budget obviously 3.5 again next year, and then we had to put $1 million into the old jailhouse to provide another court space for the new judge. That was $1 million project, unfunded mandate, you know.
That was with the establishment of the appeals court,
Yeah, well,
or the additional judge that was granted for the
Yeah,
population increase.
Circuit judge.
circuit judge. Yeah.
All right. Bill?
Yeah, I was going to pick up the circuit judge. When should the jail bill become the responsibility of the state as opposed to county?
Yesterday, right?
Yeah.
According to Eddie yesterday, for sure.
Yeah, I absolutely, I'm vehemently opposed to us paying the jail bill. And it's like I've said this before. I remember the days when Berkeley County ran the jail. They were overcrowded. They weren't cared for. They probably didn't have the funding that they needed to take care of everything. But today, and I've spoke to the Secretary of Corrections in the past, and I'm sure we have a new one now that I haven't had an opportunity with yet. But when I have an opportunity, I will express my same concern, is that these folks are arrested on state charges. They are then sent before a state magistrate. Then they are sent to a state-run jail. And the county has no say in this whatsoever other than to pay the bill. These court cases can be continued without any consultation with us whatsoever, and we will continue to pay that until they are convicted. So I would like to see it like if this case is extended, at that point the state takes it over, because the state has to agree. I'm saying the state as far as the prosecutor. They have to agree to extend that case. So I'm just trying to find a way to dump it on them.
How is it calculated?
It's a per day per diem, and it's on a ranging scale. You know, it starts out at $48 a day and goes to 54, and now
we just got bumped up last week to the second level. So
to 80. Now we're at $80 a day.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So if you got two,
well, I think we're only at the second level. I think 80 is the next one, and we'll probably hit that before the end of the fiscal year.
so you got two guys in a cell. One of them is from Berkeley County, one of them from Jefferson County, and those bills are being paid by two different
Right.
jurisdictions.
Actually, it's more interesting than that is the city and the county, and it depends upon where the magistrate's from. Even though it could be the crime committed in the city, if they happen to be carried to a county magistrate, then it would be paid by the county. So,
Well, but the county continues to pay for that.
That's
even
exactly
if
right,
it's
yes.
a city charge. That's one of those areas that we truly haven't had that conversation. But at the same time, take in account that they are still Berkeley County residents, even though they live in the city. They're still Berkeley County residents. So we respect that, and we're not going to dump this on the city, because that would make us no better than the state. So
yeah. We've talked about some of the expenses. Another expense, big expense coming downstream, is going to be the Crawford Building.
Absolutely.
Would you want to speak to the Crawford Building and the need for it?
$20 million project.
40?
And
20.
20 million. And we meet with the judge once a month, and met with her again just last week and talked about that. We're hoping that with impact fees that are going to be in place by July 1st, that we're going to be able to finance some of that and get an earlier start on that building. But there's no question, obviously we're out of room, or we wouldn't have had to spend $1 million on the old jail to provide a court space. And so we have no more space, and the magistrates especially. And we're hopefully going to pursue that project within the next couple of years and get it started, because it's going to probably be a 2-year project. And we had hoped to wait till 2030, when some of our revenue bonds would have been paid off, so we'd be in a position to afford it. But we think now we can maybe get it jump started sooner, and the sooner the better, because it's an unfunded mandate that we have to provide the court space. We have no other choice. And that building now, the judicial center, costs us $3 million a year in our budget, and we get $75,000 back from the state, too.
And you're already
$75,000.
as far as courtrooms, you're already overflowing. You do not have sufficient,
Right.
and you're going to be bringing a new circuit judge in next year, I think.
Yeah,
so.
and Mr. Stubblefield, we're going to continue as our population continues to increase. Those projections. My guess is that within 5 years we'll have an additional judge by then. So, it doesn't stop. The Judicial Center will have it paid for in 29. Like Steve mentioned, hopefully with the impact fees, we can maybe get a jump on it and maybe get started a year sooner. All the plans are ready. The Supreme Court has approved everything. We're just waiting on the opportunity for us to be able to financially afford it.
Yeah, let me walk down the path of impact fees, because this is something that's going to be a new set of revenue coming in. And I know you gentlemen have been taking a hard, serious look at the best utilization of the impact fees, because the language gives you a fairly broad capability of utilizing these fees. What is the current process? Where are you in determining how the impact fees will be used?
Well, we employed a company called Tischler and Bice to be able to look at what the needs are. We invited the Berkeley County School Board, Parks and Rec, the Sheriff's Office, the Fire Service, EMS. Steve, was there anybody else?
Firefighters themselves, all that emergency. That's it. It's really, to be honest with you, Bill, it's not as flexible as we thought it was going to be.
Okay.
There's a lot of guidelines. And then when this company does this study, they're going to give us a top amount that we could charge for this particular, say, law enforcement, and that's all we can go. We can't exceed it. Now we can lower it, but we can't exceed it. So our figures are going to be coming here within the next few months.
Let me follow up on that quickly, Steve, because the impact fees, as I understand them, are going to have to be utilized in that particular area.
And for new growth only.
And for new growth. Now, would the Crawford Building, renovation of the Crawford Building, since it's county-wide, would that satisfy the requirements of the impact fees?
Yes, sir. We believe it would.
We've been told it will at this point, and we're really hoping that's the case. So that's
So every one of those agencies we mentioned, we felt were the ones that are truly impacted by our growth, and that they should have a seat at the table. They come in, they speak to the folks that are doing the study. Now, also, we're having our comprehensive plan done right now as well. So, and that was a requirement in the bill to get our comp plan up to date. So we met everything else. Obviously the zoning requirement was what was stricken, but everything else in that bill, we already met those requirements. So, it's one of those things. It's a double-edged sword, quite honestly. But at the same time, a lot of folks out here have been asking, for the growth to help pay for itself, and that's what we're trying to do.
Johnny.
So I'm going to go back to these jail fees. I find this kind of stunning. By comparison, what was it, $80 a day? Is that what we're talking about for the?
That's the maximum.
Yeah,
rate.
that's the max.
Oh.
It started out at 48, and we just got bumped up to 54 something, and then the next level, when you get so many days, and it goes up to another level.
And by comparison, what does it cost for somebody to be in the day report system, the home confinement and such? Do we know?
Very little. Yeah.
My guess is probably $25 a day.
Okay.
I don't even know if it's that much, be honest with you.
So it's order of magnitude
It's a huge
different.
saving, yeah. I have a little bit of perspective. I don't know that. My dad was sheriff when Berkeley County had a jail, and it was the biggest headache. And Berkeley County had 30,000 people back then. And I would hate to think that we'd ever have to have our own jail again, because if we did, the cost of it would be 3 times what we're paying in jail fees, believe me, and all that responsibility. And I couldn't imagine going through COVID with that responsibility and the lawsuits alone that you would have running your own jail in today's world. It would be impossible. So we're very fortunate that the state does have the regional correctional centers, in my mind, like they take care of our roads, and so we're fortunate in that respect.
What's
But
the
at
next
same
closest
time,
one?
Well, there's 10 of them in the state, regional jails. So
About 30 seconds, Steve.
Yeah, but anyway, but it does hurt when you get $1 million bump in 1 year and you're not expecting it. So
Yeah, and as a county, you have very limited ways of bringing in tax dollars.
absolutely,
You're very restricted that way.
we
Yeah.
just need the help.
We didn't get to the budget stuff here.
I'm disappointed, Rob. I came prepared.
We'll have to bring you guys back.
Anytime. You know, a phone call away.
In my case, a text. Yeah.
That's right.
Final minute coming up right after these.